We are the Deneaus family, and this is my wife, Sabrina. She hates when I ask her to stand. And then we've got our oldest next to her is Emrys, and then Theo, our middle son, is in front of her, and then Felix is in the nursery. God's called us to the country of Italy, where there are 62 million people. And the staggering fact about the population in Italy is the amount of churches, good gospel-preaching churches in the country. To our knowledge, talking with the other missionaries there, there's only 18 independent Baptist mission works in the whole country. Nashville probably has more than that. But God's called us to the country of Italy. We're going to a region, you'll see in the video, where there today is no missionary. But over 1,500 years ago, there was a group of martyrs that preached the gospel. And I like Brother Whetstone's analogy of getting the plumbing to the field. In this region, the gospel flowed like water, but today it's drier than the desert. There's no gospel. The Waldensians, that group that I was just mentioning, they're still there, but today they don't preach the gospel. They don't even believe that our Bible is anything more than a book of fairy tales. Our churches in America are getting there, but they're already there. They don't believe even in the gospel. God's called us to reach these people. If we can show that video, and then I'll have a few more things to say.
When speaking of spiritual darkness, it is often the tribes of the Amazon jungles, the interior regions of Africa, or the heart of the Middle East that come to the forefront of our minds. Though the people of these places are in desperate need of the gospel, there is another place of great darkness hidden from our eyes. A bastion of religious symbolism, boasting a majority population of those who would call themselves Christians, Italy remains blinded by the darkness. Centuries of false religion have left the Italian people without hope. Many are Catholic in name only, but have lost any hope that the Catholic Church can save them. Rather than turning from the Church to Christ, a growing population has been hardened by the Catholic Church's deceitfulness, wanting nothing to do with God or religion. Italy needs the light of the gospel. Jesus Christ came to give light to those that sit in darkness. 62 million people, religious symbolism everywhere you look, but it is almost impossible to find someone who will preach the truth of salvation in Jesus Christ alone. There are currently 18 independent Baptist mission works in Italy, many of them new and very small. Imagine only 18 churches reaching the entire population of Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, and Louisiana. The need in Italy is enormous, but the laborers are few. Italians have an outward form of godliness, yet remain in darkness and unrighteousness. Someone must shine the light of Christ in this dark country that they may know the good news of salvation.
Hello, I'm Trevor Deneaus. This is my wife Sabrina and our 3 boys, Emrys, Theo, and Felix. God has called us to shine the light of the gospel to the people of Italy. As a high school student, God began to work in my heart about going to Italy when I read a book about the martyrs of the faith. Many centuries ago, a group of believers preached Christ in the northern region of Piedmont, Italy. Many were even killed for their faith. I began to wonder if the gospel was still preached in Italy, and God has put a burden upon my heart to pick up where these believers of long ago left off. A few years later, my family was practicing a song for our church's missions conference. As I sang the words, "How will they hear if we don't go?" I realized that I had been willing for someone else to go, but God showed me that night that He wanted me to go. After studying for the ministry and then returning to serve in our home church, God made it clear that it was time for us to go. First Baptist Church of Everett, Michigan has affirmed God's call upon our lives and sent us out to plant churches in Italy. We have partnered with Worldwide New Testament Baptist Mission as an assisting agency to our local church.
While the entire country of Italy needs the gospel, God has burdened the Deneaus hearts for the northern Piedmont region, specifically the town of Pinerolo. Pinerolo is a town of 35,000 people where it would be difficult, if even possible, to find a gospel-preaching church. The next closest independent Baptist church or missionary lives 2.5 hours away, and one must drive through more than 150 towns to get there. Every one of these cities and towns, small and large, needs someone who will go and tell them that Jesus is the only way they can get to heaven. Upon their arrival in Italy, Trevor and Sabrina will attend a language school in Siena. While studying Italian, they will learn from and serve with veteran missionaries Frank and Jenny Maeda in Grosseto, Italy. After a term of Italian study and learning to minister in the Italian culture, they plan to move to Pinerolo to plant a church. After establishing a church, they desire to train national leaders to help them reach out to plant churches in the other cities and towns of Italy. The Deneaus are going to Italy not only because of God's command, but because He is with us always. He has all power in heaven and on earth. His word can conquer hearts. He has the power to lighten darkened minds. He can transform the people of Italy. He is the master, and they desire to be used of Him. One of Hudson Taylor's converts asked him, "How long have you had the glad tidings in your country?" "Some hundreds of years," was his reluctant reply. "What? Hundreds of years? My father sought the truth and died without finding it. Oh, why did you not come sooner?" The same statement could be said of the gospel in Italy. They have been mostly without the truth for more than 1,500 years. The people of Italy are passing into eternity, forever to suffer in the torment of eternal fire. We have the light for which they have been searching. Will you answer their cries by helping to send the Deneaus family? Also, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" Then said I, "Here am I, send me."
One thing we often get is the question of why such a small town? Not only do we feel that God just is putting us there, He gave us a peace about going there. But when we got to this town and we were on our survey trip, we were with Brother Chris Yetzer. And when we came into the town, we were headed towards city center, and there was a young girl, I'd say she was high school age, and she was coming in our direction. She was running and she was crying. And when we got to her, our paths had crossed. We simply asked her, talking through Brother Yetzer, "Is there anything that we can do? Can we help you in any way?" And the answer she gave to us will never leave our hearts. She said, as a teenage girl, "I have no hope and I have no place to turn." The people of Italy, they're looking for the truth. They're searching. They know that they have no hope in religion. I said this morning in chapel, Christ didn't give us a religion in Scripture. He gave us a relationship. And what has Catholicism done in Italy? It's given them a very hard religion. But God's called us to spread the relationship, His relationship that He desires to have with each and every one of us to the world. God's called us specifically to this town to reach these people. Yes, 35,000 people, but we don't know who God's going to use in that town that our ministry is going to reach, that is going to reach some of the other towns in the area, and it's just going to grow like wildfire. But it's got to start someplace. Some of the things about Italy and the work there, number one, the language is quite difficult. I wouldn't say that it's the most difficult in the world, but it's quite difficult in the fact that it's got two different generations of the same language running at the same time. And because of that, we're going to be in language school for about 2 years. They say if we do very well in language school, we'll come out speaking about like a third grader. And if we don't do so well, then we're about the kindergarten level. And that's a very humbling fact, but we know that God is able.
We know that with God's help, we can pick it up faster than 2 years, but we're just planning to spend about 2 years in language school, because without learning the language, there's no way of effectively planting a ministry in Italy. The missionaries there have been very adamant about learning the language, but also learning it correctly, which means we have to wait for a majority of the language learning till we get there. So that's why it's going to be about 2 years when we get there. Instead of starting and learning a lot of stuff here, they've given us examples of having to relearn it, and that'll take the rest of our ministry. So we've got that, but with the 2 different generations of the same language, it comes with another difficulty. Italian does not have a good translation of Scripture. There are actually 2 different translations, and both of them are corrupt. One was done about the same time as the King James, and it was done by a single man. If he didn't like it, he didn't translate it. He did not finish translating the Bible, yet he called it a complete work. Then we go over and we have the new translation that was done. It's actually in the language of the people, but it was done in the 90s, and there was a few people in the group that are critical text advocates, and they've tainted it with that. But it also has some problems with it besides that. So what we're looking for as missionaries is a translation to be done that is equivalent to the King James, perfect in every way for the Italian people. That is the number 1 prayer request that we have. It wouldn't just help our ministry, it would help all ministries in Italy, and it would help the Christians in Italy to grow. A couple last 2 stories and I'll be done. Giuseppe and Fausto. Fausto is a young Italian man, the first in many generations that we know of, that has accepted the call to preach. And this is a very big thing, because in Italy, men don't take leadership roles in the home and in the church. So him taking the call to preach that God's placed on his life and accepting that, going to college and getting the training that he needs under one of the missionaries there that had led him to Christ. So he's a product of an American missionary in Italy. But he's I believe it's this fall or this winter, he's going to be planting a church in his hometown in Italy. That's one success story, if you will. That's the goal of missions, is to reach Italians, because they can reach Italians far better than we can. But the miracle story, I guess I would call it, is Giuseppe. Giuseppe was a monk, and he was reading his Catholic Bible in the monastery, and noticed that his Bible and the Catholic Church did not agree. Now, this is no new thing to us, but he found this, and he did something that most Italians and definitely most Catholics would not do. He chose to trust Scripture. Not what the Pope says, not what man says, but to trust Scripture. And in trusting Scripture and studying more, he found the plan of salvation, the Romans Road, and he accepted Christ. He also found Brother Frank Maeda, who we're going to go work with. Obviously not in studying his Scripture, but he was doing some looking, found somebody that was preaching the gospel, and that was the missionary that we're going to go work with. When Brother Frank Maeda met up with him, got his testimony of his salvation, they figured out very quickly that he had to get out of the monastery. So the plan that they had come up with was that he was going to have to go back to the monastery and ask to be released of his vows and be able to get out of that. But he didn't even get the chance. And if I left it off there, you'd be wondering whatever happened to him. But let me just give you a quick thought. God worked. God worked in a miraculous way. When he got back to the monastery, he didn't get the chance to ask to be released. The head monk came to him and told him, "You don't fit in here. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I heard a little bit of a chuckle. You guys got it. God protected this young Christian. These are just a few ways of how God is working in Italy. He's getting ready to do a very big thing. We also know that the end times are coming. And if we're reading prophecy correctly, the Vatican has a big deal in that. So even more so of an emphasis to make sure that we get a presence, we get missionaries over there to preach the gospel, to win people. We don't know how much time we have left. But God's getting ready to do something big. We're looking forward to getting over there and starting our ministry. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. What a tremendous opportunity, and we get a chance to support them and get them to the field. We're excited about that, and trust you'll be praying for them, asking God to bless them. Well, we want to be a blessing to this family. We've kind of prepared early to do this, and so let's have the nose come right on up here. Come all the way over here to the Christmas tree side over here. Bring your kids with you. And Felix is in the nursery, but you boys can tell him all about it, okay? We're going to have a lot of fun right here, boys. All right. And we'll let them get over there. And we are, thank you for the presentation to Italy. And here's how we do it at Franklin Baptist Church. If we could say it like this, boys, it's Christmas in Tennessee. Enjoy this.
We're excited about the prospect of what God has for them and how we can be a part of that as well.